Hey,
I'll second it.
we have a motion and a second. And Shauna, roll call, please.
Vice President Finn.
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Director Ellis.
Yes.
Director Laliotis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Seconded that.
Bob did.
Thank you, yeah. Okay, SANA, number 15. Consideration of approval of the Electric System Master Plan 2019 and CEQA.
Good evening, President Bender and members of the board. This is item 15. As we've discussed a few times, the Electric System Master Plan is our comprehensive planning report for long-term improvements, and we update this document every 5 years. The general timeline for the project was that the board awarded the contract to Electrical Consultants Incorporated in November of 2018, and we presented the findings of that master plan update November of last year. As part of the master plan process, we have to go through a CEQA process, the California Environmental Quality Act process as part of the master plan. And the board approved the CEQA initial study and set a public hearing in January. And right after that, we filed our initial study paperwork for the CEQA, and we conducted the public hearing on February 5th. The public comment period closed on February 22nd. And then tonight, we have the consideration of the formal adoption of the master plan document and filing the CEQA negative declaration. During the public comment period, it's important to note that there were no comments received related to the CEQA. And at this time, staff is ready to file the CEQA notice of determination and negative declaration. Those two items go hand in hand. As far as fiscal impact, this project was included in the fiscal year 20 budget. And staff's recommendation is to adopt the Electric System Master Plan 2019 and the CEQA negative declaration, and to authorize the filing of the notice of determination with the appropriate agencies. And at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any public comment on the CEQA? Egg deck, Electric System Master Plan. All right, seeing none, we'll go to comments, questions. Bob?
No, great job. Thank you for all your hard work. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Tony?
Steve, is it appropriate to comment on this letter?
I was just going to bring that up. We did have a comment letter submitted for public comment. It wasn't directly to the CEQA, but you all have a copy of it, yes.
But it was related to the master plan.
Yes, sir.
So since we're approving that, we can discuss this letter.
Yes, we're really talking about this, the environmental aspect of the master plan document itself.
Are we approving both the document and the CEQA tonight?
We are adopting both.
Yes.
Okay.
That is consistent with how we've done it in the past. The public comment period was specific for the CEQA process, and as such, we've deemed that the response, which specifically says it's not in regards to the CEQA process, doesn't really
Understood.
apply to that.
Okay.
But if you want to comment on it, we are adopting the master plan.
No, I just wanted to see if staff had a recommendation of what their next steps are with regard to this request from the town.
Our intent is to write them a letter stating our existing policies, which has always been that growth pays for growth. And quite honestly, with respect to their request, if we had 2% of our, if we had a discretionary 2% on our electric budget, we would probably not be undergrounding the particular circuit that they're referring to, because it's one of our high reliability circuits. We'd be undergrounding circuits in areas where they're more fire hazard.
Sure. No, I'm just trying to figure out what staff's next move is going to be on this letter, so.
Probably a letter of that nature.
Okay, that's fine. No other comments?
I don't have any comments either. This is all step by step by step. We're, yes,
Yes.
CEQA. Got it.
Motion?
Make a motion as per staff recommendation to adopt the electric system master plan.
I'll second that.
Great. Shauna, roll call, please.
Thank you, Vice President Finn.
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Director Ellis.
Yes.
Director Laliotis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, go back to the agenda. Okay, number 16, end of cycle budget review.
Good evening, President Bender and members of the board. This is action item 16, and I do have the pleasure of having Tricia Phillips up here next to me. So if I make any mistakes or if there's some detailed financial questions, she'll be there to support. With this action tonight, we are closing out the 2-year fiscal year 18 and fiscal year 19 budget process. This includes looking at the fiscal year 19 budget to actual results. And on the screen is the full year process with the details of the dates and times. So this slide, this first table is a high-level view of the fiscal 19 year budget as approved by the board. And I'll draw your attention to the bottom. It was a balanced budget. So now we're going to move on to fiscal year 19 actual results. This slide presents the electric and water utilities FY19 operating results. I will draw your attention down to the bottom line in bold, where you have net revenue in excess of budgets for both utilities. That's good news. And so the electric had a favorable variance of over 1.1 million, and the water was favorable a little over 800,000. So now I'm going to jump into the electric utility specifically in a little more detail. Again, net revenues in excess of budget was over 1.1 million. That was made up of a 4% favorable variance for total operating revenue, a 9% favorable variance for total operating expenses, and then I'll get into the capital. And so let's start with the 4% favorable variance for total operating revenue. The 14% for other sticks out. That's standby charges, joint pull, and miscellaneous fees. So they do tend to vary year to year based on demand and the timing of the revenues. Let's go down to total operating expenses. Again, we had a favorable variance of 9%. For the Board of Directors, the 36% unfavorable was due to investments in the GM transition. The 16% favorable variance for general management was really about labor reallocations as we've moved functions between departments. Dropping down to conservation, the 12% favorable variance. Some people might think that's unfavorable in that we didn't get to spend all the conservation money. It is still robust, and our results remain robust, and it does reflect our investing in new program designs, specifically electrification. Going down 2 more for information technology, that's a minus 41% unfavorable variance. And that's really driven by the addition of 2 FTEs to protect the district from cybersecurity threats. Keeping going down, purchase power, 16% favorable variance. This will be covered by Joe Horvath in the next item, so I won't go into too much detail, but it's really about strong UAMPS performance. And then finally, under building maintenance, a 26% favorable variance. As we've just discussed, we've done a lot of capital and building improvements, and with that, that's a little bit of a shift of resources out of maintenance. So again, the end result is a total operating expense favorable variance of 9%. And then if we go down to the bottom portion, total other income, that's a big number, 147% in terms of percentage. In magnitude, it's not that large, and that's really that the district did better on our investment returns than we had budgeted. So again, a good thing. And then on capital expenditures, it's a 60% unfavored difference. And that's really the planned deferment of capital projects from fiscal year 18 to fiscal year 19. And that was primarily AMI really going hard in 19 and finishing it up. And then the deferment of Envision DPR were the two big items there. So again, electric utility has a net revenue in excess of budget of over 1.1 million. This is a list of the significant amount of capital work accomplished by the electric utility. If you have any questions on that, I'm happy to answer them. Okay, Tricia, have I missed anything?
You've done a very good job.
Okay, thank you very much. Does the board have any questions about electric before I move on to water?
No, all good, thank you.
All right. Moving on, now let's look at my other favorite utility, the water utility. Again, net revenue was in excess of budget by just over $800,000. That's a good thing. If you look at total operating revenue, we had a favorable variance of 1%. If you look at total operating expenses, we had an unfavorable variance of 6%. And then again, we'll go down to capital. On operating revenue, it's pretty tight, and so I won't comment anymore on that unless you have questions. For operating expenses, Board of Directors, again, unfavorable 36% due to the GM recruitment investments. General management, same thing, 16% favorable due to the labor reallocations. Dropping 2 down, conservation, 26% favorable. Again, not always considered that way, but it's about resource prioritization and focusing on the future. Operations, the 9% unfavorable was really driven by the allocation of labor from capital to operations. We'll see later that we delayed capital projects, and that shifts labor back to operations where we were able to do other stuff. Moving forward, information technology, the 34% unfavorable, again, labor to protect the district against cybersecurity threats. And then the end result being a unfavorable 6% total operating expenses. Moving down to capital, we had a favorable variance of 48%, and again, that's the deferment of mainline replacements primarily due to very high construction costs and other staff opportunities. So again, the water utility had revenue in excess of budget of a little over $800,000. The water utility did accomplish some significant capital projects, and that's the list right there. Tricia, did I miss anything?
No, you didn't.
Thank you. Board, do you have any questions on water before we move on to reserves?
Are we done with the water meters, or is there more water? I mean, the AMI meters are separate, obviously, but are we doing anything with water meters?
It is likely that we're going to need to replace another large batch of water meters this summer.
Okay.
Okay. So this slide shows year-end reserve balances and the board's goals. Again, the cash balances have increased for both the electric and the water utilities. I would like to draw attention to the proposed transfers column, which is the second blue one from the right. And staff is recommending that we transfer $1 million in electric from operating to reserves. And then I'd also like to draw your attention to the last two columns, the The beige one is the fiscal year 19 year-end reserve balances, and then the far most right column is the board goals. As you can see in electric, we're creeping up and close. Water, we still have a little way to go, but this is consistent with the 10-year financial master plan. Any questions on reserves? So as shown on the previous slide, overall fiscal impact is in alignment with the board's approved FY18 and FY19 budget. And staff's recommendation is to, 1, accept this report, and 2, authorize the transfer of $1 million from the Electric General Fund to the Electric Capital Replacement Reserve. And we'd be happy to answer any questions at this time.
Great, thank you. Any public input? All right, close public input. Krista, any?
No, just that it's always really satisfying to approach your reserve goals. So it's nice to see that coming into alignment. So, yeah, I'll be happy to authorize that transfer when we get there.
We're on the upward side of the smile, I think. Yes, yeah. Bob?
No, looks good. Glad you're transferring some additional funds to the reserve fund. That's pretty good. It's a good move.
Tony?
No, thank you, Stephen. I'd say Tricia was up there for your benefit, but. On your pleasure. No, I want to say thanks, that was a thorough document that you guys provided, as well as, you definitely highlighted the blips and explained them very well, so I appreciate the detail in that, so, thank you.
Yeah, ditto on the detail. That's really nice to just nail that right up front, mention it, so really appreciate that. And
I had a lot of help.
Yeah, so, thank you, and if there's no other comments, is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept this report and to authorize the transfer of $1 million from the Electric General Fund to the Electric Capital Replacement Reserve.
I'll second that.
Shauna, roll call, please.
Thank you. Vice President Finn.
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
Director Ellis.
Yes.
Director Laliotis.
Yes.
Thank you.
Great, thank you both.
And just one more comment. I just wanted to thank all the employees of the district. I mean, that was a very good report, and if it wasn't for all their hard work, it wouldn't have been such a positive report.
17, Joe, you're up.
Well, good evening, President Bender and members of the board. Tonight's item is workshop item number 17. This is a review of the purchase power plan, budget versus actuals for fiscal year 19. So included within the fiscal year 18 and 19 budget process is the purchase power plan. The plan was approved by the board on November 17th of 2017. Seems like a long time ago now. And included the following guiding principles and items. Of course, our mission statement to start with, which is to provide reliable, high-quality electrical power services. I won't read the rest, but you all know it. This is foundational to the purchase power plan. The plan also includes items like RPS requirements, which is a state requirement, of course, and conservation is a first resource. Conservation will continue to offset growth for us. A diversified power supply plan. Diversification allows us to spread all the risk associated with electrical generation resources and costs over a variety of resources. And it also includes future renewables and proposed resources and forecast purchase power costs. So how did we do last year? Well, in summary, the district was under budget by a total of about $2 million on purchase power supply, or in percentage terms, 16%. The two factors that directly affect our purchase power costs are energy consumption by our customers and resource costs. A combination of these items help to reduce our, to put us under budget, excuse me. And these included the fact that our energy consumption was about 2.1% less than budgeted, and so we had a reduced demand last year. And that reduced energy consumption resulted in reduced loads, which in turn made an excess of generation resources available. This excess was sold into the market by UAMPS for a net gain to the district. In addition, UAMPS had they performed better than budgeted across all their projects for all their members. And that good performance was credited to the district's purchase power against our total purchase power costs. And so all these factors help to reduce our purchase power costs to a little less than $67 a megawatt hour, or about 14% under budget. And of course, again, total purchase power costs were $2 million under budget, or 16% under budget. So this is a bar chart of those costs, and it's just another way of looking at our budget versus actual performance. As noted previously, of course, we're about $2 million under budget. This graph depicts our budget versus actual energy usage by month for fiscal year 19. Budget compared to actual. The budget's in the blue, the actual's the red. By and large, the actual energy sold is very close to budgeted amount each month. However, the most variability occurs during the winter months and during July-August timeframe. And overall, for the entire year, the district's actual energy consumed was about 2.1% less than budgeted. For comparison purposes, over a 15-year period, this variance is about plus minus 2.5%, so our 2.1% less is well within that average. And this graph depicts our actual load by month for the last 10 years. This is peak load in megawatts. And so you will notice that there is very little change over the years during the summer months. That is June through September, June, July, August, September. The shoulder months of March, April, and May, and October and November have more variability. And the months of December and January have the most variation, and that's expected with our mountain climate. Our system peak usually occurs in December or January, as we are a winter and weekend or holiday peaking system. And so last year, our peak was 34.3 megawatts. And if you look in the month of December, that's pretty much right in the middle of that entire range over the last 10 years. This graph depicts our budgeted versus actual load all the way back to 2005. There are two important takeaways for this graph. From about 2005 to 2009, that's the steep portion of both of those curves, and we averaged in that time frame about a 4% load growth over that time. But over the last 10 years, since 2009, our load growth has been much more modest. It averages about 0.5% over that time frame. And then 2015, you will notice there's a big dip in the curve. This is an anomaly. We cannot understand why, although we just make the general comment that energy consumption is dependent upon weather, visitors, the economy, and doesn't reflect actions by the district.
Does that include power for water pumping in that?
Yes, all the actual, it includes.
2015, the big conservation year?
We've looked into this number, and we just don't understand why it's so low. We've looked at it from various angles, including losses and our normal loads by various agencies, large customers. We just have not been able to explain this anomaly. This pie chart shows our actual resource mix for fiscal year 19. And the big takeaway here is that we have about 61% renewable resources, and we're about 66% when we include both renewable and carbon-free resources. And of course, there can be small changes for these amounts from year to year due to the variability of renewable resource generation. The wind blows more or less. You have a bigger, more water or less water year, things like that. And of course, this is our famous meatloaf graph, what we call the meatloaf chart. And this is another way of looking at our resource mix. Instead of a pie chart that would just show 1 year, this shows all of our resources for the next 10 years and what each contributes to our forecast energy need in megawatt hours. And so there's several important things to note about this graph. The UAMP solar project, Red Mesa, has been added to the projected resource mix starting in 2022. It's shown in yellow. We just picked that color at random, you know. We had yellow available. Sunshine. We estimate that this proposed project will contribute about 8 to 10% of our energy requirements each year going forward. Again, the district is well-resourced out for the next couple years to the end of 2022, and that there are several contracts that fall off in the 2022 to 2024 timeframe, including our 5-year market purchase. And while the UAMP solar project helps, staff will continue to monitor the market closely and will keep the board informed of opportunities to secure low-cost renewables and carbon-free resources in advance of the need for those resources. UAMPS is currently working on the next market purchase contract for members, and it will probably have a shorter time frame than the 5 years. We have not seen it yet, but that's what we've been told by UAMPS. The Renewable Portfolio Standard, or RPS requirements, started back with Senate Bill X12 back in 2011, and that set an RPS requirement of 33% by the year 2020. Additional legislation has increased those targets. SB 350, passed in 2015, increased RPS to 50% by the year 2030, and of course the well-known SB 100, which passed back in 2018, increased RPS to 60% by the year 2030, with the remaining 40% from carbon-free resources by the year 2045. And overall, this results in the bottom part of the slide, the following compliance periods and targets. We are currently in the 3rd compliance period with a requirement to meet an RPS of 33%. And as you are aware, we have had an RPS of over 60%. And are well positioned for the future. This slide shows our estimated RPS performance for fiscal year 19. It's an estimate because the REC amounts for fiscal year 19 actually aren't finalized until Q2 of this year. So the district's estimated RPS is about 61% for fiscal year 19. The RPS calculation is very straightforward. It's simply the total eligible renewables divided by retail sales. The only qualifier is how California defines retail sales. Per the California Energy Commission, retail sales excludes water pumping loads and the district's own energy use, which is largely composed of water pumping. And this table shows our involvement in the California Air Resources Board, or CARB's, GHG cap and trade program. It goes going back all the way to the year 2013. The key takeaways from this table are that the allowance revenues from these auctions have totaled around $1 million per year, except that last year the total was about $1.5 million, and we expect that amount will be the same this year that we'll capture in those auctions. And allowance revenues have been used to offset the cost of renewable resources, specifically the Horse Butte Wind Project. In fiscal year 20, $1.5 million has been allocated to reduce the cost of Horse Butte Wind. The cap and trade program was set to expire this year in 2020. However, the legislature approved a 10-year extension to cap and trade, so it now is set to expire in the year 2030. Wow. However, allowance allocations have not yet been determined by CARB. That's why there's a TBD in the year 2021 there on the chart. But we expect that they will be getting these allowances determinations soon from CARB. And also, we have started to look at the carbon performance of our portfolio. This is a complex issue, and our carbon footprint of our portfolio varies by time of day and by season. The district in overall, in broad terms, is 66% carbon-free today, and will be about 75% when we add Red Mesa Solar in 2022. And preliminary analysis shows the district approaching 100% carbon-free during the daylight hours when Red Mesa is running. So that's less than 12 hours a day. But during those times when the sun is shining on Red Mesa, we're approaching that number. However, more work needs to be done to analyze this, and so staff proposes to bring a workshop item to the board in the future. So this table summarizes what we've discussed so far. The key takeaways, of course, that purchase power costs are about, in total, $2 million under budget, or in percentage terms, 16% under budget. And when we convert all the purchase power costs to $1 per megawatt hour basis, we're a little under $67 a megawatt hour for fiscal year 19, which is, again, 14% under budget. And thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Is there any public input on this workshop item? All right, seeing none. Krista, any?
Yeah, I have all sorts of stuff, because I really enjoy these presentations, Joe. This is one of my favorite things to think about. And so just sort of, from what you just presented, just a few things that I didn't notice in the reading of it, that UAMPS was thinking of shortening the open market power purchase timeframe. Are there pros and cons to a shorter, like if they shorten it from 5 years to 3 years, for example? Why would they do that? Why wouldn't they do that? What's the reasoning behind it? And is it good for us?
The answer to the question is yes, it is good. It is good for us. There's a lot of action in the markets right now. Costs are low, but there is on the risk, of course, is legislation coming in and saying that you need to have X or Y type of power. So those factors, it helps to have a shorter. They believe that we're going to get a better price and for a shorter market year purchase. However, they haven't given us a formal presentation yet, but that is what they've indicated in meetings.
Okay, and that is like a set price for 3 years. That's something that's predetermined? Is that how the contract works? It's like, okay, we're going to buy a 3-year thing and it's this much.
Correct, and it's shaped, and it's important to note that the market purchase is shaped to our load, so it's not just a flat, set amount, but the beauty of what UAMPS does is we have all these different resources, wind, now solar, the VAO heat recovery, other resources that have varying amounts. What is lacking, they take our load profile, they take our resources and our load profile, and then they use the market purchase to fill in the gaps. So it's shaped to our load by season. So that's, especially with Red Mesa, Red Mesa will, that's a 6 megawatt addition to our purchase. So just in general, our market purchase will go down by,
Yeah.
it'll be shaped to our load, of course, but it'll go down some just because of that addition.
Got it, which rolled right into you mentioned that with that, online will be approaching 100% during daylight hours, when they're daylight hours. And how is that? That's something, obviously, we're thinking, you said it needs more, we need to look at it carefully, what that means for us. Like if we push people to use electricity during the daylight hours to take advantage of the 100% renewable, but then are we no longer approaching 100% renewable because we made the pie bigger, right, of the energy that would be?
Well, if it's energy that you've shifted out of the evening hours, no, you
Okay.
haven't made the pie bigger. Staff plans to bring this back to the board. However, the first the first blush at it, the presentation was so complicated, I had a hard time following it.
Believe it.
And we really need to refine it and get it on point before we bring it to the board. But it was quite a dramatic display.
Yeah, huh.
But what it basically says is for our current load, there's little justification in another large solar project.
Project, right.
I mean, solar on homes and businesses and stuff, that's fine.
Right.
But anything in the larger size, in the megawatt range, certainly,
Sort of going to waste.
it's going to
Kinda,
waste.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting, all these puzzle pieces and how they will or won't work together. Another question I had was about the conservation goals. 2.1%, is that good for conservation programs to conserve 2.1% of your load?
Oh,
Is that-
I think the 2.1% you're referring to is, I commented on our actual performance in fiscal year 19. Our energy, the amount of energy used
was
in-
down
in-
2.1%.
In fiscal year 19 was 2.1% under budget.
Okay.
So we budgeted a certain amount, but we fell short of what we had budgeted.
Okay, so that's really a different subject. Okay, I'm going to continue moving down look, I've got all these little things, sorry. Some of these things are not actually directly related to your presentation, but they came up as I was reading things. Okay, we just answered that question, so I'm going to throw that away. Sorry. The other one was it seemed pretty dramatic, a 16% drop in the price of our power purchased. And for the reasons that you talked about, I mean, a lot of those have been in effect. They've always been in effect. I mean, UAMPS has always been a financially, responsible entity. And I just think I hope to see this trend continue. For whatever all of the drivers behind it are, it's good news, no matter how you slice it. And one other thing that I was looking at was you broke down costs, transmission costs, and also distribution losses. What's sort of current thinking on distribution losses? It went up to like 7%. And this is off the top of my head, I'm not looking at it here, which seems like it's a fair chunk of energy being lost in distribution. Is there, what's current technology on that front look like? Are people looking to improve that? Are things out there that will improve that? Or is it just something, obviously it's something we live with. We don't have perfection in our physical world, I understand that, but it seemed like that was a fairly large chunk of energy to just let's say, yeah, that's cool.
That's a great question. And in fact, those are, the goal of any utility is to reduce our distribution costs, loss costs. And part of that is accomplished by, that's why we do the master plan. So part of those projects have many benefits, and one of the benefits, one of the many factors of those benefits is to reduce losses, because we have to pay for losses, absolutely.
Right.
Are you referring to the 15-year, the table I had in attachment sheet 2 that showed the different amounts of distribution losses every year?
That is probably what I was looking at when I made the note in a different part of the presentation that wasn't attached to. There it is, yes, there it is. Are there things we can do to mitigate our distribution losses? And that is by the distribution system losses, megawatt hour.
I have
chart.
that slide. Let me go to that. It's actually,
Joe, while you're doing that, let me
There it is.
restate that when we say losses, we mean apparent losses.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that energy was somehow lost somewhere.
Well, I mean,
But it may be unaccounted for due to meter error,
oh, okay.
okay? That doesn't mean it leaked out somewhere.
Okay.
Okay, it's not
That's
equivalent to
clarification.
a main leak, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
yeah, that's a good point. Thank
Yeah.
you. I pulled up this table. This is losses as defined by the difference between what we purchase from UAMPS and what we sell to our customers. The variability here, we believe, is associated with the fact that for the last 15 years, we've had an AMR meter system. and we read those meters on a, we have 4 cycle reads per month. Sometimes those cycle reads overlap a month. So there's not a perfect correspondence between the energy that's recorded by UAMPs that they generated that month for us and what we sold to our customers in that calendar month, because the meter reads are on a cycle, they're on 4 cycles that overlap months.
Okay.
So there's not,
Measurement.
so with AMI meters now, that's not the case anymore. We know hourly usage for our customers. So going forward, we're going to know much more accurately the amount of energy that our customers use per month, because the meters reflect per hour every day. So we expect to see this number.
Kinda
This
tighten
year
up.
was 2.5%. We expect to see that the energy losses will be this historical number. This will tighten up
Will be
because
more
we'll have much
consistent.
more accurate reporting. It's not, as the general manager pointed out, that somehow these are going somewhere. We're not accounting for them. It's just simply a disconnect between what we record, what we did in the old world with 4 cycle reads that overlapped a month, to that to the corresponding energy that we got delivered from UAMPs. So
So
that
we're interested
number.
to look at this next year and the next
Yes.
year and see.
Right. And this number is an important number to look at, because this can help, once we get a more precise correlation going forward, we can use that number to target areas. We may have one area that's more lossy. We can break it down by substations in the future.
Right.
We can identify, well, maybe this feeder has more losses, or this whole substation. And so we need to identify projects for those areas that will help us target capital improvements that will pay bigger dividends for the district.
Perfect. You just answered one of my last questions, which was how is that AMI data that we fought for useful to us? And that was pretty clear explanation of that. So I think that's all of my comments. But thank you very much. This is really fascinating information. I appreciate you putting it to bed so clearly for us to help us understand what we're doing.
you.
Thanks.
Sweet. Awesome. Bob?
I recently read some articles about Germany where they've gone full bore into renewables and stuff like that, and I'm going to be doing some more research on that and get more information. But it sounds like from some of the articles that in the last 10 years their energy costs have tripled by going full force into renewable energy, and I just hope that doesn't happen here. If from what I can see, we're doing it the right way in this district. But I just want to try to do some research and find out where they went wrong and what happened. And so if you know of anything about that, love to hear about it.
Thank you.
Tony? Thanks, Bob.
No, thanks. Great report, very detailed, a lot of data. I appreciate that. And just want to once again, thank staff and continuing. I know a lot of time spent, you spend a lot of time at UAMPS, away from the office and your family, and I appreciate that. I think the dividends and benefits of our relationships with UAMPS and CPA continue to pay off, and these are good examples of that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Definitely. Thank you very much. It's a workshop.
Yes.
So there. Carry on.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We have some routine business tonight. Treasurer's Report, March 2020. Item A, approval of the Treasurer's Report of fund balances as of month ended 12/31/19 and 1/31/2020. Your motion.
I move to approve the Treasurer's Report of fund balances as of month ended December 31, 2019 and January 31, 2020.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Say nay. It passes. All right. Does anyone want to pay the bills? Item B, approval of disbursements for 2/2020.
Well, I guess
I'll be Joe and moved that we pay the bills.
I'll second that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Say nay, no. All right, motion passes. Okay, we have two closed session items tonight. Number 19, property closed session conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.87 regarding APN 18660-39 and 18660-07 with district negotiators Michael D. Hawley and Shauna Kuhlmeyer. Under negotiation is the price and terms. And the item number 20, last item, closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54957, public employee performance evaluation, general manager's performance plan review. All right, thank you.